Hello, everyone. This is the fourth class for social psychological perspectives on health. In the last lecture, I talked about social identity theory and then social self-categorization theory. Basically, social identity theory is about how people behave when they identify with a group. It's a theory about intergroup relations, intergroup behaviors. And then I also talk about when their identity, sorry, basically when people are motivated to have a positive identity and when their positive identity is compromised, people may or may not try to restore their positive identity through different approaches, such as social creativity and social competition. And the self-categorization theory is about how people define themselves in terms of either as an individual or a group member. And there are important concepts like depersonalization and self-stereotyping. And then also there are two factors that explain how people choose a category to define themselves. Those are fit and readiness. In the last lecture, I talked about fit. So there are two kinds of fit. One is comparative fit and the other is normative fit. And so today I would like to talk about readiness. Okay. So readiness is prior experiences of using a particular social identity or category as a basis for self-definition. So, for example, if a person is told before by others that he or she is introvert, or in Japanese,陰キャ, or if she or he or she is from a culture where those people are more common or acceptable, he or she is more likely, or in other words, he or she is more ready to categorize oneself as introvert. But if the person believes that uh, introvert is not a kind of trait that is not a kind of trait that is applicable to yourself, then it may be so hard for them to use such category of people to define themselves. So basically, readiness is really about how often or how frequently a person has used that identity or category to define themselves, and then it's how acceptable such category is. So a given social identity becomes salient when both comparative and normative fits are high and when one has used that identity before to define oneself. So when a particular category really helps to explain the similarity between members within a group and also the differences between groups, meaning that comparative fit is high, and then also when the observation of the members fit with prior expectations of that member, then a category that defines or the identity that defines those people can be said that it has a high normative fit. And also, a person is more likely to identify with that category when he or she has prior experiences to use that category or identity to define themselves. Okay. Another concept that is important is prototypicality. So after knowing that so when people identify with a group, then they're going to strive to value. Sorry, so let me find exact position where I'm talking about. here. So when and to the extent that a person defines themselves in terms of a given social identity, they will enact or at least strive to enact the norms and the values associated with that identity. But the question here is that how do you know which norms and values are associated with that identity? And how do you know which norms and values are particularly important in for that identity? To answer such question, the concept of prototypicality is useful. So the question is, how do they know what are normative in a new group? So when they belong to a new group, for example, when someone becomes a doctor, and how this new doctor knows what kind of norms and values are important, what kind of behaviors and beliefs are normative in this group of doctors. And just like fit, there is a comparativity and normativeness, comparativeness and normativeness of prototypicality. So basically, when someone belongs to a new group, that new member look for a person who is comparatively and normatively prototypical, meaning that they look for someone who is similar to other members of that group. And then also they try to find someone who is different from members of the other groups. Okay, so maybe you can imagine like when you first belong to a new group and then you don't know how you should behave, right? And then you want to know what would be normative or acceptable to do in that group. So you may want to look for someone maybe prototypical in that person in a sense that who are similar to others. You don't want to imitate behavior of someone who are perceived as different or strange from others, right? So you want to look for someone who is similar to others. And also because you want to adjust or adapt to this new group, you don't want to follow someone who is more similar to other groups rather than the group that you just belonged. Okay, so you implicitly, without knowing, you may try to look for someone who is similar to other group members and also someone who are different from members of the different groups. And then you also look for someone who are consistent with prior expectations of group members' behavior. So maybe if you become a doctor, then you have prior experiences of interacting with doctors as a patient, right? And then you already have some expectations of how doctors should behave. And then you basically want to learn from doctors who have been working for several years or maybe tens of years, right? Then you want to learn from someone who are basically consistent with your prior expectations. You're not going to learn from someone who is very different from your prior expectations of how doctors behave. Okay? So basically, prototypical persons tell what we should do. When you don't know what or how you should do, you are going to look for someone who can tell what you should do, right? And then who is this person? The person is someone who is prototypical, meaning that who are similar to other group members and different from other group members, different from members of the other groups, and then also someone who are consistent with your prior expectations of that group members' behavior. So meaning that someone who has comparatively and normal, someone who are comparatively and normatively prototypical. So there is one study showing how this prototypicality influences our behavior. A healthy diet message can be rejected when such message comes from multiple members, meaning that, for example, like someone would say you should eat vegetable a lot, or you should eat something warm or hot rather than cold, you know. But these messages are more likely to be accepted, and then these messages are more likely to influence their behaviors when such message comes from someone who shares group membership with the listeners, with the recipients. And this is because such message does not come, okay, sorry. Yeah, so the reason why a message from outgroup members are rejected is because such message does not come from a prototypical person in group. In other words, outgroups should not tell what we should do. Outgroups know what they should do, but that's different from what we should do. Okay. Another example maybe is that maybe some people usually say you should eat meat to be healthy, but assume that you're vegetarian or vegan, and then someone who are going to say you should eat meat is likely to be a outgroup member. They are not vegetarian or vegan, right? So you are very likely to reject such message because someone who are not vegetarian or vegan should not tell what we should, because we vegetarian know what to do, what to eat. All right. So depending on where the message comes from, whether the message is from in-group members or out-group members, the impact of message on your behavior would be very different. And that's because the source of message, the degree of prototypicality of the source is different. So this argument can be formalized as the following hypothesis. Hypothesis 9, the influence hypothesis. When and to the extent that people define themselves in terms of shared social identity, they will be more likely to influence each other. So the more they identify with a group, they are more likely to influence others, and then also they are more likely to be influenced by others. But the way they are influenced is dependent on how such others are also identifying with that group. And the other hypothesis 10, the prototypicality hypothesis, people will have more influence in defining the meaning of a given social identity to the extent that they are seen to be representative of that identity. So those who are seen as prototypical have more power to define what we should do. So people who are perceived as a leader tend to be also perceived as prototypical or representative of that group. And then such leaders are going to decide or define what this group is, and then how we may behave as a member of the group. So these hypotheses can be expressed in these box models. The more they identify with a group, the more they identify with a group, they are more likely to be perceived as representative of the group or the identity. And the more they are perceived as representative of that group, then they are likely to have more influence on others' behavior. And then also, the more they identify with the group, they're more likely to be influenced by someone who are representative of the group. Okay? All right. So up to this point, I have been talking about how belonging to a group and identifying with a group membership is influential to our behavior. Okay. But there is also a line of research showing that not just a social identity, but social identities are an important psychological resource. So this line of research tells that the more social identities a person has, the more benefit they should experience because these give them access to more resources. So I have been talking how belonging to a group influences our behavior and our psychology. And then also I have been talking about how belonging to group can give you a resource. But if that is true, then the more social identities or more groups we belong to, then we are more likely to have access to more resource. Okay? And there are tons of research showing that belonging to multiple groups have the uh, belonging to multiple groups can make people healthier. For example, there is a research with patients recovering from stroke or patients recovering from depression or students moving to university. So students, if they have more identities when they enter university, they are more likely to have a better well-being. And then I will talk in more detail in later lectures. And also adults adjusting to becoming older, like when they retire from their work, their job, they are more likely to have better health, and then they are more likely to have better well-being if they belong to multiple groups, not just a company, but if they belong to multiple groups like hobbies and then groups of friends. And also sports people recovering from physical exertion. So basically, people who identify themselves as a sports people, injury could be a cause to have them lose their identity. But if they have multiple groups that can define their identities, then they're more likely to have better well-being. And also there are studies of various populations by Jet and colleagues showing that uh, multiple group identities elevate self-esteem. So these line, this line of research can be formalized as this hypothesis, hypothesis 11, the multiple identities hypothesis, providing they are compatible with each other, meaning that the values or norms associated with each group is not in conflict, it's compatible. Uh, yeah. And then providing that the groups are important to them and positive. The more social identities a person has access to, the more psychological resources they can draw upon, and the more beneficial this will be for their health. So there are conditions, you cannot belong to any groups and become healthier. They need to be compatible, they need to be important, they need to be positive, and but if these conditions are met, then the more social identities you have access to, the more psychological resources you can use, and the more benefit you can gain for your health. And I will talk in more detail about this hypothesis throughout this course. So now you are wondering, okay, maybe social identities are important for health, but what should I do? No? And then there are several research showing that social identities can be provided. For example, residents in care homes show better cognitive, mental, and physical health if they build social identity with other residents, meaning that when people get older, they may live in care homes. They may live in a care home. And then they could just be a resident of the care home, but they could also become a member of the care home. It's different. Just being a resident of the care home as an individual and then become a member, meaning that identifying with the group and then internalize the membership of the group is different. And then if you internalize the membership of the care home and then identify with that care home, then you are more likely to have better cognitive, mental, and physical health. Okay? So it's really important how the program of care home is structured in a way that residents can develop their social identity. And in such, there are ways to make residents feel that they are a member of the group rather than just an individual living in a care home. And then also those who are homeless or recovering from substance use abuse improve their mental health by bringing them together in groups. So homeless people or people who have experiences with substance abuse can be helped, supported in a group rather than as an individual. And if such approach can be, if such approach is used to make them feel that they are a member of a group rather than an individual who are receiving support from organizations, then they're likely to have better health. Okay. So it may sound like a small difference, but whether you receive support as an individual or you receive support as a member of a group, then you are going to have different outcomes. This is really the message of this course. So depending on how you perceive yourself, whether as an individual for receiving some kind of service, or whether you perceive yourself as a member of the group, then you are going to have different outcomes. Okay? And also motivation or the well-being of workers. So if a company can provide a social identity to their workers, those workers are more likely to be highly motivated and then have higher well-being compared to those who think that they are simply working there as a individual. Okay. And then there's another research showing that training experiences for carers, if such training can help carers to develop social identity, then the experiences and outcomes of the training will be much better. And then those who have higher social identification as carers tend to show higher leadership capacity as a health professional. So even like a training, whether you take that training as an individual or if the training has some components to make trainees to feel that they are a member of some sorts of groups, then such differences make huge impacts on the outcomes and experiences of the training. And then to the extent that they feel that they are a member of some sort of groups, then they are more likely to show higher leadership capacity. So overall, what I'm saying here is that if you have social identities, then you are going to have better health and then better work performance and higher well-being. And then such social identities can be provided through how organizations or companies uh, structure the training or programs provided for uh, people, for individuals. Sorry. So such social identities can be provided by depending on how companies structure the training or services that they provide to their workers or the patients or people who are in need. Okay. So social identities have very huge impacts on our health and well-being and life satisfaction. And such social identities can be provided if you feel that you are members of a group, if you are a member of a group, then you can gain the benefit from social identities. And but the programs or the work style is structured in a way that you cannot really feel social identity, then you will miss the benefits that social identities could provide. Okay. So I think it's kind of getting long. So I will just stop here and then I will cover the rest of the content in the next video.